So it's really good to be out here in the woods and enjoy nature and kind of enjoy what my husband and I have been working on out here. It's just, I'll show you up close in a few minutes. It's just a simple double bed, since my husband doesn't like the idea of sleeping on the ground where snakes could easily crawl into his sleeping bag. But at any rate, for those of you who follow our channel, you know that we're very active people, and I'm an avid lover of the outdoors. I like to be outside. I like to do stuff outside. But some of you know, some of you may not know, that I had some serious health challenges here the last few years. And I really wanted to just share kind of a testimony of what God has done for me and how He's guided me in this illness, and just give Him praise. So let me back up a little bit to about, well, not about, it was actually July the 4th, 2013. I had a significant head injury. I fell off of the hood of our car. I was trying to tie some lumber to the lumber rack because the people at Lowe's didn't want to do it. And as I was coming down off of the car backwards, my foot slipped and I fell backwards and landed just flat on my back on the concrete. And I'm pretty sure I had a concussion because it knocked me out. And the people from Lowe's came running out asking if I was okay. And of course I was kind of frustrated because they wouldn't help me tie the lumber up, so I just jumped up and said I was fine, which I wasn't. Everything hurt and my head was spinning, but I got up and I finished what I needed to do, and I went on my way. And of course the next day or so I was pretty sore and bruised up from head to toe, and had headaches for quite some time after that. And my husband and I didn't have insurance at the time, so we didn't go to the doctor. And but again, I'm pretty sure I had a concussion. 2 weeks after that, we were riding horses with the man that owned the ranch that we were caretakers on, and I ended up on a little pony that nobody liked to ride. His name was Buster. Well, Buster started bucking, and he couldn't buck me off, so he reared up and he hit me right in the face with the top of his head, and it snapped my head back. So I had another head and neck injury. And I don't, if you know anything about contre-coup injuries, some people call them counter-coup, when the brain is shaken like that, it can cause significant damage. Well, anyway, you know, I guess I didn't think too much of that. I just sort of went on and, you know, thought, well, I've fallen off of horses and gotten banged up most all my life, you know, so I guess I just didn't really think that could be significant. But I have since learned that traumatic brain injury can cause some serious issues, and it can lend itself to a condition called CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Well, we're going to fast forward now a couple years to 2016, when my husband moved from North Dakota to Kentucky. And when we moved down here, we had to rent a place sight unseen, because we had to rent it from North Dakota, and we needed a place that would accept puppies, because we had 2 puppies at the time. And so we came down in February 2016, and when we walked in the rental, it was a lovely setting in a little valley, and I have videos from that place on our YouTube channel, but the house was loaded with mold. Well, at that time, I really didn't know too much about mold and the danger of it and everything. I knew it was not good, but I didn't understand just how deadly it could be. And so, but I didn't want to unload any of our things, so before my husband and I unpacked anything, we just flew into a cleaning frenzy. And I understand now that that's really not the thing to do when you have a significant mold issue in a house. And we did find out later that house had flooded the previous year, and they didn't tell us. They had just kind of painted over the mold issue and stuff, and tried to patch it up the best they knew how. And I certainly don't mean to make the people sound as though they were trying to be deceptive. I think they just were like me. They're just ignorant, just didn't know how serious that could be. So anyway, I was outside a lot there. My husband was gone a lot because he was working doing landscape, so he was outside a lot. We had the 2 puppies, so I was out playing with them a lot, and so it didn't affect me as significantly as it might have. Although when we moved from there, my husband and I both noticed that we kind of didn't have as much energy. Maybe our minds weren't as clear, but we didn't think too much of it. I mean, we're getting older and we've been through a lot, you know, traveled a lot and everything. So anyway, we just sort of shrugged it off. And then we started building our house on the farm, the property that we had bought in Casey County, and just really beginning to notice, these gnats are flying in my eyes, to notice that we didn't have the oomph, you know, that we used to have. And I was really pushing, trying to get cabinets sanded and stuff done, and I ruined my hands, and subsequently ended up having 4 hand surgeries, which equals 4 rounds of antibiotics. So that compounded the issue that I'm sharing with you right now. Well, again, for those of you who have followed our ministry, you know that we eventually sold the farm there in Casey County. It just was a lot for us to take care of, especially with my hands the way they were, and my husband had to work outside of the home. It was a lot of maintenance on that place, and so we ended up selling it. And when we sold that, we moved into a rental on a big cattle ranch. The landlords were really nice people, and we didn't realize it when we rented the place, but it also had a mold issue. And we later found out that when it was a bank house, and when they were coming up to build the 2nd level, the ceiling had caved in and the whole basement had flooded. And so here again, another water damaged building. And when I first looked at this place, I noticed a little bit of a musty smell in the basement. I guess I didn't think too much of it because I don't think anybody had lived there for about a year. And so I just thought it was, you know, that closed up smell, you know, when a house is not lived in for a while. So I didn't think a whole lot about it, but after we moved in, neither one of us felt great. And then I think we moved in there like in April or something, and then in July we had to go to North Dakota to help Kaylin's parents, and when we came back, the air conditioner, the cooler thing, I don't know what you call it, evaporator, I'm not sure, but anyway, it had blocked up somehow, and the air conditioning unit had flooded the basement. And so right where the heat unit, it hooks in the basement to go up into the upstairs, the whole ceiling in that area was now covered with mold. And when, you know, we didn't notice that much difference in our physical health immediately, but when it started cooling off a little bit and we had to use the furnace, it was an incredible, almost overnight difference that it made in me. Now, I was home more than my husband, so it affected me more than him, but if he had a few days off from work, you know, if he was between jobs or something, and he was home more, his throat constantly burned him, his eyes were burning, and he just didn't feel well. But it got so with me to the point where if I walked up the stairs from the basement, my heart was pounding and I had to sit down and catch my breath. Like, that is not me. You know, I'm normally very active. I wouldn't say athletic, but I think I'm fairly fit, or was fairly fit. I was so dizzy, and it was not a normal dizzy. It felt like my brain was spinning inside of my head. I had a constant metallic taste in my mouth. I had to be very careful with my computer, because if I reached to touch my computer, just a static shock. I was shocking everything. You know, everything I touched, I was getting shocked. I was thirsty all the time. I was having to go to the bathroom all the time. I just had to urinate all the time. It was like I thought I had diabetes, because I would drink and go to the bathroom, and drink and go to the bathroom. It's like I was always thirsty and always had to go to the bathroom. My hormones, I kind of knew, were all out of whack. Just different things were going on. I had chest pain. I had a cough. My eyes were burning, and maybe you're putting two and two together already. Those of you who know me already know, but the mold was making me quite ill. Now there's a certain subset of people that have a gene type called the HLA gene type, and that group of people are extremely susceptible to mold, and they're not as able to detox themselves from mold. So apparently I'm in that category. But at any rate, it got to the point where I was so sick. I mean, I would just spend the morning throwing up and just really sick. And so finally my husband put his foot down and he said, "You're going to the clinic." I didn't want to go, and I went kicking and screaming and throwing up. But they did a bunch of lab tests, and they found out that I did have autoimmunity. It had triggered autoimmunity in me. And the nurse practitioner that saw me there said, "You need to get out of that house right away." And our family physician said the same thing. So at any rate, we rented another place. We burned some of our belongings because, you know, they had visible mold on it. We tried to clean everything else, and we moved into another rental. And I did notice some improvement, but I just couldn't get over the hump, and I knew something still was not right, you know, because I was trying to detox myself from the mold. I was researching, and I found Dr. Andrew Haywood. He has done I think it's a 4-part series on YouTube on chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which is triggered by biotoxin illness, among other things, including head injury. Anyway, Dr. Haywood has a block. In one slide of his presentation, he had a slide that he showed up, and he had a block on there, and it had, I think, 13 boxes. And he said, if you have symptoms in 8 of these 13 boxes, you have a 98% chance of having chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Well, not only did I have symptoms in every one of the boxes, I had almost every single symptom on his list. And so mold literate doctors are extremely expensive. I mean, one friend of mine told me it's like $750 just to walk in the door. Others are around $350, but there's really not any around us close. So I just did a lot of research, and I found there was a rather expensive mold test that we could do. There's actually 2. But I chose to do the lesser expensive of the 2. It tests for 5 of the most toxic indoor molds. And if you don't know that indoor molds is more of an issue now in today's building standards than it was even when I was a kid. Buildings are much more airtight. We're using a lot more sheetrock and stuff like that. So mold definitely is a greater problem than it used to be even 50 years ago. At any rate, it's called the Hurts Me Too. I did the test, and the furniture that they had me test was our bedroom furniture and our living room furniture. The 2 places, you know, you typically spend most of your time, and it was off the charts. And I dusted more on our bedroom furniture than even the living room. When I shared the results of that on the biotoxin illness support group on Facebook, one of the guys excuse me on there, who is, you know, helps people recover from mold, asked me if I wiped mold to do the test, and I said no, I wiped my bedroom furniture. So at that point we realized we had to get rid of everything. So we got rid of all of our furniture, a lot of our other belongings too. I did not want to get rid of our books, so we boxed them up, and they are in storage right now. But the Lord opened the door for us to come and stay with friends here where we are in eastern Kentucky right now. They have a cabin on their property, and they graciously invited us to come. We didn't even know them. They had followed our ministry on YouTube and Facebook, and they very kindly offered their furnished cabin to us to stay in until we figured out what we were going to do, and so that I would have time and an environment where I could recover. So this has afforded me time to research and to really buckle down on what I needed to do, because I don't like to be sick, and I don't like to do treatments and stuff. I'd rather just pretend like I'm not sick. And that just wasn't working. And so at any rate, I read Dr. Neil Nathan's book called Toxic. I read Dr. Jill Krista's book called Break the Mold. I watched Dr. Richie Shoemaker. I watched Dr. Andrew Haywood. I followed Dr. Jill Carnahan, and all these people. I bought the Toxic Mold Summit with Dr. Margaret Christensen, and so I just did a lot of research, and more was convinced that the CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, was what was causing my problems. It basically just turns on your innate immune system, and you have systemic inflammation, which, if you may know, that causes systemic oxidative stress, which, you know, inflammation is the foundation of all disease. And CIRS causes inflammation in all of your organs. Mold toxicity is actually called inhalational Alzheimer's. And I got to the point where I would stutter. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't focus. I had constant headaches. And that's not a life. And one night, I 2 steps forward and 3 steps back on my progress, and I just couldn't get over the hump, and I couldn't figure out why. And one night, about a month ago, I had what I believe, I'm not a physician, I don't diagnose or whatever, but as I've looked at the symptoms and compared with what happened to me, I believe what happened to me was a cytokine storm. I was so sick. Every muscle, every bone, every tooth, every hair, every fiber of my being was in excruciating pain. I had a headache so bad that I was ready to scream. I was nauseous, I was throwing up. My husband, this was at night, and my husband was up with me trying to help me. We did hot foot baths, we did coffee enemas, and the coffee enemas relieved the pain a lot, as did the hot foot bath. But it really was, I was actually begging God to just let me die, because I was that sick. I was tired of fighting. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get over the hump and what was wrong with me. But my husband was praying that I would live, and so I think the Lord liked his prayers better than my prayers. So be that as it may, I'm here. And this is kind of the moral of the story of what I wanted to share with you today. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get over the hump, and I was praying about it. And I remember reading in the protocols that you have to deal with parasites. And so I've done parasite cleanses off and on through the years, and so I thought, no, I'm all right, with that. I didn't really hit that too much. But I thought it's worth a try. And so I kind of backed off on everything else that I was doing, and I was doing a lot. And I just hit the parasite cleanse wide open. I used mimosa pudica and clove oil. And after I started that, it was a couple of days after I started it that I got to feeling really bad. I didn't crash, but I just felt bad. And after about 2 days of feeling really bad, it was gross. I passed the nastiest mess of parasites I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of people and animals that have had and dealt with that, but needless to say, parasites like to hang out in your bile ducts. And a lot of what I was doing was trying to support the liver and help the liver drain. And my liver could not drain, is what it seems to me, because it all fits together. Once that happened and I started passing the parasites, and I have passed more since then, it's like I rounded a corner. I have energy, I have clarity of thought, I've had no more pain. My speech is clearing up. My friends have told me my countenance looks better. I'm almost normal, and I'm almost back to my energy level. And so everything that I was doing to try to deal with the mold, it was working, but it couldn't work as it needed to because my liver couldn't drain. And I neglected to tell you that shortly after this what I believe was a cytokine storm. I started having liver pain. My liver swelled up. I could see a bump where the edge of my liver was, and I had pain. I couldn't even stand to touch it. I could hardly, my food wasn't digesting properly. My kidneys started hurting, and I just kind of got my attention a little bit, and that's when I backed up and I just prayed. I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. And parasites came back to my mind, and so I hit it really hard. Now, I want to tell you what Dr. Todd Watts says, and this is getting to be too long of a story here, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. But Dr. Todd Watts with microbe formulas has a test for parasites, and it's the 2-finger test. He said you take your 2 fingers and you place them on your wrist right here, and if you feel a pulse, you have parasites. So it's not just me. And so any kind of weird health issues, and there is such a long list of symptoms that parasites can cause, that I encourage you to, if you're suffering with some kind of health issue, to consider that that might be an issue for you. And even if it isn't causing whatever ails you right now, it's worth considering, you know. And so I just praise God, you know, for helping me to deal with that, and I'm very thankful for my husband's support through it all. And so I'll put a link in the comments below for where I get my mimosa pudica. I also take, and that's another thing, I take clove oil along with it, because as the parasites are dying, they pass all these eggs because they want to live. And so you have to take clove oil along with it, and the clove oil will kill the eggs. And the way the mimosa pudica works is it suffocates the parasites, and so nothing gets used to being suffocated, so they're not going to get immune to it. So I guess that's about it. I just wanted to share with you what God has done for me. I'm very grateful that He has guided me. I feel as though I am out of the woods now with this. There's still a few things that I'm still working on. I just praise God, you know, that He has brought me through this. And one other thing that I wanted to share that I think may have added to it, and again, this video is getting too long, during the time that we were on our property, and I meant to share this earlier, 2018, August, I had tetanus, and I believe that sensitized my body to the mold and made me more susceptible. That was August 2018, and then in January of 2019, I got Rocky Mountain spotted fever from a tick bite. So my body has been through a lot, with 2 head injuries, 4 hand surgeries, tetanus, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and biotoxic mold illness. And if God can bring me through that with natural remedies, He can do that for you too.